Good morning. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. So, this is going to be a free-floating one of these, not entirely detailed, just more me ranting into the void. You mind that, Stella? Me ranting into the void? I don't know. She's just interested in just lame. So, from the last video, obviously, I was covering the death of Charlie Kirk, being as respectful as I can be while pointing out that people should not be celebrating, doing their little happy dance to the fact that the man died. And also, not only of the morality of it, but the pragmatic nature of it, of if you do that, it instigate and provoke people who are not exactly up on the whole nuance of the whole matter, especially fresh as him dying, that it would lead to complications. And the writing was on the wall of how people react not only to people being happy, but the very fact of Charlie Kirk dying, and how they reacted to it as using Charlie Kirk's death for their agenda. See, one of the things that I find almost as disgusting as those who were cheering the death of Charlie Kirk is those who are trying to take political advantage of his death, to use his death, prop him up, as it were, for their agenda against the transgendered, against leftists, or left-leaning people at all. I mean, President Trump is now, trying to officially make Antifa designated as a domestic terrorist group. Try to find Antifa if you can, since there's nothing really Antifa really does. So what does that become? That Antifa becomes a catch-all to everybody who is left-leaning or democratic at the very least. I mean, these people can't define what woke is, much less can they really define what fascism is, or communism is, or any of these other isms, or critical race theory. All these things that sound super awful. It's so totally super awful that we should never be a part of, ever. Oh yeah, but what is it? I don't know. That's right, you don't know. But you oppose it and you hate it because someone told you to. Now, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, I gave a period of grace. A grace period. One of the things I've asked of others, not only from Charlie Kirk's death, but for every mass shooting that has happened, either a mass shooting at a school or elsewhere in public that causes either a large casualty count, or if the casualties involving the death of children or anything, and I would ask, for people just to stop. Just give it a moment. Give it a day. 2 days, 3 days. Originally, when the first time I did a video talking about a shooting, I asked for a grace period of a week for people to not get onto their political high horses. But that was too much to ask. So I reduced it all the way down to a mere 24 hours. Just to hold it in, hold that political reindeer gaming for 24 fucking hours. And people just couldn't handle it. I mean, as I said, as an example, like the Covenant Christian School shooting, they spent the day, people on Twitter were spending the day trying to identify what type of flavor of an LGBTQ person was the shooter, as opposed to giving any lip service, mild as it may be, to the names of the victims. Because political reindeer games means more, as they did with Charlie Kirk's killer. Now, one of the things is the unfortunate byproduct of what had happened for this knee-jerk backlash of people who were using Charlie Kirk's death for their political advantage would be the temporary suspension indefinitely of Jimmy Kimmel. How people were applauding that. Yay! Yay, because he said something not nice about Charlie Kirk, and so he must be punished. The FCC guy, Brandon Carr, so you either do it the easy way or do it the hard way. They have to help with the community. They have to help with the viewership and etc. 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 I'm paraphrasing, but this pretty much you get the gist. Was that, veiled, not very thickly, but veiled between all that is that we don't like what you say, and we're going to stop it by any means necessary, including jerking with the companies to take you off the air for the good of the people. Okay. And, of course, President Trump touted his cancellation. He's so happy because because he's not very good and he doesn't do good ratings and this and that and this and that, and despite the fact that late night shows anyway, their ratings was softening across the board. That doesn't mean they're still not popular. They're just not as popular as they used to be. But thing is that as much as they claim about ratings and viewership and how they were all happy that he was gone because he said something really not nice about Charlie Kirk, first of all, he said nothing negative about Charlie Kirk. He insulted, and I think kind of rightly, the use of Charlie Kirk by President Trump and by others, and the rush to trip over themselves to define Tyler Robinson as this leftist ideologue maniac, either with the transgender ideology because of his roommate / lover who was going to be transitioning. So the only thing that we know about that is what they were telling us, as Kash Patel was telling us, and the governor of Utah was telling us. Jimmy Kimmel was commenting on how quick people were just, tripping over themselves. Just, our investigation lasted like 4 hours, and we know everything. Complete leftists. We don't need to know. We know his motivation. We don't need to be told or have to investigate that. We don't need to know any of that shit. No. It's clearly a political bias. This and that. We do not know fully, in complete 100% clarity, of what the motivations were. We are getting all this interesting stuff thrown at us immediately, but that doesn't mean it's investigated fully. So putting that aside, at least for now, because I'm going to get into Charlie Kirk in a bit. Jimmy Kimmel was punished and taken off the air for these things that had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk by name, wasn't directed at Charlie Kirk, nothing negative towards Charlie Kirk. But since they propped up the dead body of Charlie Kirk, they used him as an excuse to remove Jimmy Kimmel, something that Donald Trump famously, from his own social media posts and his own words, were wanting to bump off Jimmy Kimmel anyway. And during his self-congratulatorial masturbating post upon Jimmy Kimmel being taken out, he says, "Oh, well, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, you're next, ah!" As he did with Stephen Colbert. Now they want to claim that he was removed not because Trump and via the FCC was forcing Disney and ABC to get rid of him. No. It was about the ratings, that he wasn't very good, and they just decided that this was one thing too much. And so they removed him because obviously he's not very good at what he does. Okay? Yeah. But the funny thing is that then a week later, Jimmy comes back. Now, the spin is that, ABC and Disney just bent the knee to these special interests and the leftist ideology and so forth. Oh, yeah. They bent the knee to the fact that overnight, Disney lost $4 billion. $4 billion gone. Stock sold off. Just subscriptions to Disney Plus gone. Maybe that's something to do with it? Instead of it being some sort of, leftist power play, maybe that special interest that forced Disney to bring back Jimmy Kimmel, that they had to bend the knee was. Could that special interest be the public? Their actual audience, their actual viewership? It has nothing to do with ideology. It has nothing to do with the fact that, it was kind of wrong to remove him. And so the public let them know in short order. And after a $4 billion drop, they got, maybe we need to do some soul searching. And then have soul searching with Jimmy Kimmel. So Jimmy Kimmel comes back. Sinclair and Nexstar, whatever the hell the other company is, are still purposely keeping Jimmy Kimmel off the air on their affiliates. So all the local channels that would be carrying it, a lot of those that they control, they're not, they didn't air his return. So we will go into that in a moment. Pardon-moi. Time in. So he comes back despite the horrors of him, how horribly bad and meanie-head he was when he talked about Charlie Kirk, which he didn't do. But never mind, because now he's back. But his temporary removal is a symptom of what was going on for people who were, once again, propping up Charlie Kirk's dead body as a prop to go over their agenda. And it's not just Charlie Kirk's being propped up and being used for the political advantage of it. Going after Jimmy Kimmel, that was not the only thing. The other things, the other byproducts that was connected to this because of the political agenda, the FBI trying to designate transgender people as people that should be watched. You did that right. Yes. Donald Trump trying to designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. Yeah. Trying to push, in Oklahoma, they're going to try to push that every high school has to have at least one class dedicated to Turning Point and the legacy of Charlie Kirk. Oklahoma, I might add, the superintendent of their schools, is also the same guy that was pushing not only that the Bible should be taught in school, but those Bibles should be Trump Bibles. So, yeah. What happened to Jimmy Kimmel had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. He was in the crosshairs of this administration, and Charlie Kirk's death was the excuse. A tyrant will always find pretext for his tyranny. One of my favorite quotes from this song. How many other things are going to happen? with that being the motivation. Whatever injustice or depravity in morals and the erosion of our rights would be done in the name of Charlie Kirk. Now, let's go back to Charlie Kirk. Because in the wake of his death, I've seen in various ports of social media, from various other people's videos, the debate, the retrospective debate of Charlie Kirk, what he means, why he died, and is he a martyr of Christianity? Did he die for his faith and this and that? Alright. As an agnostic, I don't really have much of a dog in this hunt. My opinion on this really isn't one of those that should really matter about this, but I'm going to vent my opinion into the void anyway. I gave a grace period to not say ill of the dead, even though I did say that, in reality, I considered Charlie Kirk to be a snotty little twat of a human being, but that was just being honest. That wasn't really being insulting, from my point of view. But the debate upon whether he was a good Christian or not, that if he was a martyr or Christian, that we should start, mock canonizing him or, putting him up for sainthood, have a yearly remembrance of him on a special holy day of Saint Kirk. I wanted you to think of this. Christianity, from my point of view, from my observation, is now separated into two different types. There is the belief in Christianity, and then there's the ideology of Christianity, the political side of Christianity. Now, the belief is good. The belief in Christianity is good. If you actually read the Bible, take in the passages, take in what Jesus says, that's good. The ideology, however, sucks. It sucks. I have said this numerous times before, long before Charlie Kirk died, that when the faith is used as a cudgel against those that they believe is against the faith, be the word or action or sexual orientation or gender identity or sometimes skin color, that's the righteous cudgel against a non-believer, and then when anyone tries to cry foul about it or point out that, then the Bible becomes the shield to protect them. No, you can't give me consequence because this is all about my faith. Yep, my faith. Can't do nothing. I believe this. Faith. Neener. The ideology like that, when people pay lip service to it but not actually live it, I don't have no question of Charlie Kirk being a Christian. I have no question whatsoever about it, that in one aspect or another, perhaps privately, he does believe in it. He does believe in Christianity. And the faith taught by Jesus. But the thing is that he is also a Christian influencer. He is a conservative influencer. He has a brand. And that brand that he made money from was catering in his podcast and his political activism to a certain kind of people that does this about Christianity but doesn't really believe it, because if they actually really did believe it, some of the stuff that they say out of their mouths would be kind of in contradiction to what Christ would be teaching them. Alright? Because the things that was said goes against what Christ taught. There's some things you can think, but you don't really need to say it. You can think it. But things like that would be said. You make it a political stance that you believe that gay people are an abomination because the Bible says so. Leviticus. Yeah, well, Leviticus also said that you better throw your furniture out every month because a woman that would be in your house might be menstruating at the time and she might sit on it. Or you better carry salt every time you go to church. Better have that salt ready. Or the various other things that our good friend Levi was saying. But because that you have a faith doesn't necessarily mean that faith is to be put on blast and used as a weapon of mocking, a derision, a division. Charlie Kirk spent a career on his brand saying a lot of things that you would not really associate to what your stereotypical think of a Christian, unless you are a somebody who doesn't really care for Christianity. Then then everything he's saying just is right on track. I don't believe that, but people have, and sometimes they have a good reason to believe that there is hypocrisy and contradiction. But here's the thing. In the debate over whether Charlie Kirk is a good Christian or not, or if he's gone to heaven or not, I totally believe that he's in heaven. Despite everything he says. You want to know why? If you believe in the last second confession and asking of redemption by God, by somebody who is on his deathbed or about to die in death row, if you believe that that last minute confession and asking for redemption is answered by God and they ascend to heaven, then Charlie Kirk is a shoo-in for heaven, because that's a lot of murderers and serial rapists who ask for forgiveness and got it, because God is love and God is forgiveness. What it means to be a good Christian. What does that mean? For somebody who's outside of being, vaguely connected through family, what does it mean? Pardon moi, one more. Time in. Does it mean being a good Christian that you dutifully go to church every Sunday? Does it mean being a good Christian that you say grace? That you say the Lord's Prayer? That you lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep? Is that the qualifications here? Because, I hate to break it to you, but since the inception of the United States of America, since we became a United States, since the Constitution, since the first president of George Washington, the vast majority of criminals who committed crimes, who committed thefts, murders, rapes, assaults, in various forms throughout the centuries, majority of those people were Christian. Some of those people, I dare say, went to church, committed their crimes, went to prison, went to the chapel in prison. still believing that they're good Christians, despite the fact that they're criminals. There were people mobbing around a little black girl as she was walking towards the doors of the school that was formerly all white. When they're shouting racist shit at her, insults, throwing rocks, outraged and enraged at the fact of her violating the sacred steps of a school, with hate in their hearts. Then they went home. Then they gathered around the kitchen table and said grace because they're such good Christians. I know good Christians. I know for a fact that there are good Christians. That if there is any bit of them that has the impure thought of anger or fury or rage, that they feel guilt about it. But those people who was harassing that little girl, who would harass people who happen to be black, going to an all-white diner and throwing shit and food at them and throwing them out and kicking their ass or killing them. They all thought they were good Christians. Never passed their mind that what they are doing is violating the very tenets of what Jesus Christ tells them to love thy neighbor. There are Christians today that can't seem to square that circle of how they're such good Christians that they'll wear the cross and so forth and they'll pay the lip service, but then they will absolutely hate the immigrant. Scapegoat the immigrant, scapegoat the other, demonize the other. Who was one of these voices? Charlie Kirk. We could rattle off quote after quote after quote of Charlie Kirk that people know because that's how Charlie Kirk got famous. Of the shit that he said about other people in order to support his brand. In order to be an influencer for his brand. That doesn't discount the fact that he's Christian. That doesn't discount the fact that he's a believer. But as people who have said, who are getting backlash for having it to be said, is that you can't whitewash away someone's conduct simply because they died. It seems to be the knee-jerk once again of like, you know, if anyone happens to like factually criticize Charlie Kirk for something that he said or done, you know, how dare you? How dare you? You must be some leftist lunatic. You are one of those that killed Charlie Kirk. No. But here's the pro that I'll say about Charlie Kirk. Despite his opposition to a lot of things that I believe in, and people have acknowledged this, that at least he shows up and debates. Now, don't see, when someone says that and then they kind of like shut the door and say, that's all we need to say about that. Let's not say the fact that his debate style is, you know, argumentative and mocking and smug and self-righteous and this and that. But that's his debate style, and that's also for the clicks. That's also for the brand. But at least he shows up. People just say that much. At least he shows up. And that's fine. And here's the thing. I do not like anything that Charlie Kirk says. It annoys me that I have to throw out this caveat. Like, everyone needs to throw out the caveat is that we don't agree with what he says, but he has the right to say it. Yes, he absolutely has the right. He did not have the right to die for it. It's annoying that we have to make this point crystal clear. And there is a parallel here between Charlie Kirk and Jimmy Kimmel on this, because they'll say that Jimmy Kimmel had every right to say whatever he said about Charlie Kirk, even though he didn't say anything negative about Charlie Kirk. But there has to be some consequences. Charlie Kirk had every right to say everything that he wanted. As an influencer, as somebody in a podcast, that someone goes out there and defend his brand, this is the First Amendment. He has absolutely every right to do so. And and everyone else has the absolute right to challenge it, to contradict it, to argue it, to question it. But since we're canonizing Charlie Kirk, apparently, that any argument against him, or anything that he said, or any reflection of anything that he said, bring up his quotes as just being a hater. Just being a hater. Hater. Jimmy Kimmel had every right to say anything that he's been saying. People hate it. Donald Trump hates it. Donald Trump actively was trying to get rid of him. He did for about a week. Then he came back. And now Donald Trump is pouting. Wham! He's going to sue ABC again. He's going to stop them. The FCC is going to stop him. Because freedom of speech is not free. The other positive I will say about Charlie Kirk is that, he does welcome the challenge. He does welcome the voices of others. And he responds to them. There is, when South Park was doing their new episodes, and they're doing the scree against Donald Trump, and then they did an episode of Cartman pretending to be Charlie Kirk. Making fun of him. The show was making fun of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk loved it. At least he has a sense of humor about it. More so than Donald Trump, who pouted, and he's upset that he can't take a fucking joke from Jimmy Kimmel, or Seth Meyers, or Jimmy Fallon, or anyone else. He had said, I don't know if it was a few days ago, but he says that he wished the late night show hosts, why can't they be like Johnny Carson? Johnny Carson was great. They're nothing like Johnny Carson. And then they show video. Let's see the video of Johnny Carson in 1992 lambasting Donald Trump over Marla Maples, or him not being a billionaire. Oh, cry. He was getting lambasted by Johnny Carson. So, revisionist history. Okay, whatever. But you can't ignore the hypocrisy here for this. Jimmy Kimmel gets punished for discussing people using Charlie Kirk's death to rush to judgment of his killer, not knowing all the facts, not even waiting for us to hear the actual facts from people a little bit unbiased than those who are just, they're all leftists. It was a leftist agenda. But on Fox News, Brian Kilmeade, in a segment talking about the Ukrainian that got killed by the homeless guy was he homeless? Well, the guy who had some issues. I think he was homeless, but he had some unfortunately, mental issues. And when they were discussing that, Brian Kilmeade says maybe they should just be involuntarily euthanized. Involuntarily lethal just kill them. What I found disgusting about that statement, not only the fact that he said it so calmly and just matter-of-factly, that the host around him didn't flinch. So they must think the same thing, right? It took a few days for Brian Kilmeade to apologize for that, but he didn't get any consequences for his actions of what he said. Jimmy Kimmel made jokes upon the rush of people tripping over themselves about Tyler Robinson. They made jokes about Donald Trump. This guy advocated the killing of mentally impaired homeless people. And nothing. Who's more of the danger here, guys? They had a memorial for Charlie Kirk. I didn't watch it. But I did catch some of the highlights. One of those highlights being his wife. His wife actually showing, and I don't care if she really believes it or not, that's not even relevant. She went out there in public and she showed Christian grace by saying that she forgives the murderer of her husband. That is profound. That is thought-provoking. Good on her. I don't care what people dig up about her because they've been doing that now. Leave her alone. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, given the situation. For that moment of unifying grace, the candlelight of pure goodness of Christianity, of someone that believes it. That candlelight is snuffed out next because Donald Trump comes up next and says, well, Charlie Kirk, he loves his enemies. He wants the best for them. Tries to understand them. I don't. I hate them. I don't want the best for them. And turned it into another campaign rally all about Donald Trump. Once again, using a situation, whatever situation he's in, for himself. He's propping up Charlie Kirk to hug the dead of Charlie Kirk. Like he did when he propped up the uniform of the firefighter that died at Butler. I'm landing the plane here. I'm almost done. We have to be careful. And we have to keep watching. What happened to Jimmy Kimmel should be the wake-up call for those who have been still asleep. There have been plenty of wake-up calls from this administration, even back in 2016. But people just keep hitting that snooze button. Keep hitting that snooze button. Make excuses. Oh, you're just taking them out of context. The same thing with Charlie Kirk. Oh, you're quoting all that, but that's out of context. some of you just, especially when it comes to Trump, you make excuses, carry the water for him. You only want to entertain the whole Epstein list or his involvement in it because, that might reflect upon you and you. Who are you potentially supporting? Who are you propping up? And what he might have done with his bro, Jeffrey Epstein? It is disgusting. If anyone wants to denigrate Charlie Kirk or make fun of the fact that he died or cheer the fact that he died, and no matter how much, your opposition of him just cannot deny, cannot overwhelm, the humanity and morality of being respectful. But at the same token, demagoguing the death of Charlie Kirk, using him as a political prop, using him as the pretext for tyranny to shuffle off people's rights, using him as an excuse to dox people, to get people fired. That is disgusting as well. Using him for your agenda, that's disgusting. And it will be remembered. A lot of the people who were not so happy that Jimmy Kimmel was removed, temporarily, but removed. No matter how much they had to caveat them saying, "Oh, I hated what he said. I'm happy that is it, but I don't want the FCC or the government being really involved in this. That's wrong. That's a no-no." They're right. But they're right in that pragmatic way, as I was right last video of saying that no one should be cheering on the death of Charlie Kirk, is because what goes around comes around. And they know that if a Democratic administration returns to the White House after this current set of 4 years of Donald Trump may be the catalyst of another reversal, that if you are all happy that we could shred the Constitution enough to deny someone's freedom of speech or punish them for their freedom of speech to the point where you rob them of their livelihood for nothing, for not even insulting Charlie Kirk, just using it as an excuse, then the scary left, when they get back into power, they will do that to one of yours, as you want to do to one of ours. Governmental censorship, especially in terms of the media, in terms of celebrities, in terms of entertainment, nothing new. You go back and see what they did when they hunted down Lenny Bruce. They did when he tried hunting down George Carlin. The 80s of the rise, the shock jocks and the shock comedians. Howard Stern, Sam Kinison, Andrew Dice Clay. Early 80s, Richard Pryor. When the government, both left and right, Republican and Democrat, tried to force their personal moralities and use that in politics the same way as Christian theology is done, to go after song lyrics and singers, to try to ban music. And all they did was just cause a rating level to be made. And things moved on. Censorship. Just because we think someone should say something doesn't mean they're not allowed to say it. I don't think you should say that. But you have every right to say it. I don't like it. But it doesn't matter. In this country, you have the right to say it. I find what Charlie Kirk said in order to prop up his brand was offensive in various aspects and various issues. I find offensive. And he had every single right to say it and should never have been denied to say it. And he did not deserve death. No one deserves death for propping up their political opinion. And no one should be using the fall of Charlie Kirk as their excuse to trample on other people's rights because you think there is an advantage to do so. The ranter rants, because the urge to rant is always rising. We'll be back more for more of the... what shall we call it? Just a normal day in the United States under Trump.